The Roman historian Suetonius wrote only one line about what he witnessed in Emperor Caligula's private chambers, then crossed it out with such violence that his stylus tore through the papyrus. For 70 years after Caligula's assassination, that single scratched-out sentence haunted him. Not because of what he had written, but because even those words were too tame to capture the truth. Gaius Caesar Augustus Germanicus ruled Rome for 3 years, 10 months, and 8 days. In that brief span, this 24-year-old emperor did not just break the boundaries of Roman decency. He obliterated them so completely that his own Praetorian Guard, men who had sworn blood oaths to protect him, finally cornered him in a palace corridor and stabbed him 30 times. But their knives could not kill what Caligula had unleashed. The rituals he performed behind marble doors, the sacred laws he perverted, the family bonds he shattered. These acts carved themselves so deeply into Roman memory that senators would still wake screaming his name decades after his death. What drove a beloved young prince, heir to the greatest empire on earth, to transform his palace into a theater of depravity so complete that his own grandmother begged the gods to strike him down? The answer lies not in madness, but in something far more terrifying. The absolute corruption of absolute power and a mind brilliant enough to weaponize Rome's deepest taboos against itself. Gaius Caligula was never supposed to be emperor. Born the third son of Rome's most celebrated general, Germanicus, he spent his childhood in military camps along the Rhine frontier where battle-hardened legionaries gave him his nickname Little Boots for the miniature soldier sandals his mother dressed him in. The troops adored him. Here was a boy who could recite the names of fallen heroes, who listened wide-eyed to stories of Germanic battles, who seemed destined to carry on his father's noble legacy. But Rome's imperial palace was a place where destiny rotted like fruit left too long in the sun. When Germanicus died suddenly in Antioch, many whispered of poison. Young Caligula found himself thrust into the viper's nest of imperial politics. His great-uncle, Emperor Tiberius, summoned the 18-year-old to the island fortress of Capri, where the aging ruler had retreated with his collection of philosophical texts, astronomical instruments, and what the servants whispered about only in the darkest corners of the villa. For 6 years, Caligula lived in that island prison, watching Tiberius exercise power through fear and paranoia. The old emperor had grown to trust no one, not even his own shadow. Every morning brought new executions and new accusations of treason. Caligula learned to smile through it all. The perfect student, the heir who never flinched when Tiberius ordered another senator's death. When Tiberius died in 37 AD, the Roman people saw only the golden boy returning. Germanicus's son, the prince who would restore Rome's lost glory. When Caligula entered the city for his coronation, 1,000,000 voices rose in celebration. Flowers rained from windows, veterans wept in the streets. They had no idea they were cheering for a man who had spent 6 years learning that humans were instruments to be broken at will. At first, Caligula appeared merciful. He honored predecessors, freed prisoners, and rewarded the Praetorian Guard. Rome exhaled in relief. But behind the marble facade, something darker took root. It began with dreams. Caligula claimed he conversed nightly with Jupiter, Venus, and Diana as equals. His secretary Callistus noticed the emperor's distant eyes as he described these divine meetings, speaking in whispers about the true nature of power. By his second year, dreams became doctrine. Caligula declared himself a living god and demanded that Rome recognize it. He told the Senate that gods engaged in acts beyond human morality, and as their equal, he too must transcend earthly limits. The first ritual came during the festival of Lupercalia in 39 AD. Beneath the palace, in torchlit chambers filled with incense, Caligula gathered senators, generals, and wealthy citizens who dared not refuse his summons. There he inverted sacred traditions. Priests sworn to celibacy were forced into acts of Congress. Sacred and profane were merged, family bonds erased. His sisters Agrippina, Drusilla, and Livilla stood at the center. Caligula justified it by invoking Egyptian pharaohs, claiming divine blood demanded divine unions. The rituals that followed shattered centuries of Roman restraint. Soon, senators' wives and generals' daughters were commanded to join ceremonies that mocked every law of decency. Refusal meant death. Participation meant surrender of the soul. During the Feast of Saturnalia in 40 AD, what had once been a joyful festival became a theater of degradation. Caligula presided in the costume of Venus, forcing nobles into acts that defiled Rome's most sacred spaces. When Drusilla died in 38 AD, his grief turned monstrous. He declared her a goddess and claimed to commune with her spirit through unspeakable rites. Rome had worshipped emperors before, but never one who believed he truly was a god. They were united not by ambition, but by shared revulsion. The rituals had to end, even if it meant killing the emperor. On January 24, 41 AD, as Caligula returned from a private ceremony for Drusilla, the conspirators struck. In the same underground corridors where he had defiled Rome's sacred rites, they surrounded him. Charia's blade struck first, followed by 29 others. Each conspirator needed to feel the emperor's blood, as if only his death could wash away their shame. When the deed was done, they searched his chambers and uncovered records written in Caligula's own hand, detailed accounts of every ritual, every victim, and plans for even greater ceremonies that would have engulfed every noble family in Rome. Claudius, the new emperor, ordered these records burned, but fragments survived in hidden collections and the memories of those who could never forget. The official histories called Caligula mad. Madness was easier to accept than the truth. Those who served him knew he was deliberate, not insane. Each act of depravity had been methodically planned to destroy the foundations of Roman virtue. He had turned shame into a weapon of control, binding senators and generals through acts so degrading they could never expose him without condemning themselves. In the months after his death, Rome struggled to reclaim dignity. The senators who had worshipped him as a god could no longer speak of honor. The generals who had surrendered their families to his will could never again command true respect. The people, once willing spectators of his ceremonies, now realized how completely they had been deceived. Claudius ordered the palace purified, its chambers cleansed with holy water, but the corruption could not be erased. The stories of what Caligula had done spread across the empire, whispered warnings of an emperor who had mastered the art of degradation. Future rulers like Nero and Commodus would draw inspiration from his example, though none would match his precision in using humiliation as power. In less than 4 years, Caligula transformed Rome itself. The empire that once prided itself on discipline and virtue became more fearful, more obedient, more willing to accept authority without question. He proved that conquest was not the only way to destroy a civilization. It could also be done from within, through the calculated corruption of its soul.